Hello, welcome to Createful Art, a place where you can learn to paint and be creative. If you're needing some inspiration, want to improve your art skills, and add some joy to your life, hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it so you don't miss out on any more art lessons or tutorials on my channel. I'm so proud of you for taking that small step to becoming a better artist. Today I'm going to share with you 7 ways to keep your acrylics from drying too fast. This can be a problem because once acrylics dry, they are permanent. This makes blending harder and moving the painting around while you're working a challenge. If you have struggled with these, this video is for you. Make sure you watch this video to the very end, as all my tips here are going to increase your knowledge and options. So you can see that I don't just paint with acrylics. Okay, all right. Whew. So I've been doing art for many years, but when I first started painting, I started painting with oils and I loved how they dried slowly. So as you can imagine, switching to acrylics was quite an adjustment for me. So it's no surprise to me that one of the #1 questions I get from my Createful Art members is, how do I keep my acrylics from drying too fast? But now that I have painted with acrylics for years, I have learned some pretty cool tips to making acrylics dry slower. Blending is now easy for me, and I don't have to hurry through any parts of my painting trying to race that dry time. Painting is more fun when we can relax and paint at our own pace. So let's get into it and learn 7 great ways to keep your acrylic paints from drying too fast. #1 is a STA-WET palette. This is the most important thing I changed, is I got the STA-WET palette. It can keep your paints wet for weeks. The problem with using dry palettes is that your paints are already drying it out on them as soon as you take the paint from the tube and put it on a dry palette. This decreases what artists call open time, or the workable time you have with your acrylics. The ability to start with fresh, wet paint is key to keeping your paints workable for longer. So the STA-WET palette is basically a container that has a sponge on the bottom layer with a special kind of paper on top that stays wet. That special paper makes the paint sit on top instead of soaking into the paper, keeps them wet, and keeps them from spreading everywhere. If you want to get one yourself, there is a link in the description. #2 is add water. Obviously, water helps keep things wet, and it costs nearly nothing, so this is my next best tip for that reason. But just be careful that you do not use more than 25% water with your paints, or it will weaken your paints. Why? Well, your paints are made out of the color, which is pigments, and the stuff that holds the color together, which is the binder. I'm not going to get into all of the science, but when you add water, it starts to separate the color and that stuff holding it together. That's why you don't want to add too much. It will not only lighten or dull your colors, but it could make your paints peel or flake later on. I recommend getting a spray bottle so that you can mist your canvas before you put your first layers on, and that'll make it easier to get that first layer on and make it spread all around. And spray it when you're trying to blend, because it'll just keep it workable longer. Don't spray too much or it'll make it drip. And you can spray your palette to keep them from drying and stop your paints from creating that top layer of film that can be so frustrating. The third thing that you can use is mediums. These can be added to your paint, but they do not weaken your paints. That means those pigments and that binder isn't going to get stretched at all. In fact, it will strengthen your paint to have mediums. But there is not just one medium that can slow your paint's drying time. Like, you can get some that will make your paints more fluid or thicker or glossy. I have additional art lessons for those for my Createful Art members. If you're interested, go ahead and click up there on that right corner and you can see how to get my art lessons. They're all about increasing your skills and options as an artist. If you're looking for just a slow dry or a blending medium, most paint brands will have one specific to making your paints dry slower. So make sure you grab the one that is aligned with the consistency you want with your paints. For example, some are for fluid and some are more like a gel or a heavy body. I like to use the slow dry liquid medium because I usually use it in my first steps, in which I like to have a more fluid paint for that. So be sure to check on the back of your medium to see if it increases or slows your drying time if you're using something besides the slow dry or the blending medium. It just depends on what it's called based on the brand. So the next thing, number 4, is retarders, also known as additives. Retarders are like water. You can only add a specific amount to your paints before they weaken them. But a slow dry retarder can be very helpful when you don't want to change anything else about your paint but the dry time. This is especially useful if you don't want your paints to become more transparent or more see-through, as mediums usually make your paints more transparent. If you don't want that, a slow dry retarder is your best choice. Just look on the back of your container to see how much you can use with your paints. Number 5 is Open Acrylics by Golden. These paints dry up to 10 times slower than regular acrylics. This is actually a huge amount of time. Getting paint that is less frustrating for you might be a better option than having to add something to your paints all the time. If you're used to working with oils, I recommend these paints to transition to acrylics. Number 6 is another brand of paint. It's called ATLIER Interactive Acrylics. This is another option that is great. These paints work much like watercolors in that they can be reactivated. So if you paint with watercolors and it dries, you can go back in and add water to move it around and reactivate it. So this is similar in that you can reactivate it, but instead of water, you use what's called an unlocking formula. You add that formula, and even after your acrylics have dried, they become workable again. So you can blend or move the paint around. Guys, this is huge. That means acrylic paints don't have to be permanent once they're dry. There is no other acrylic paint out there that is like this. And all you need is this formula from ATLIER to go with their paints. And anytime your paints are drying too fast, you just add it to it and keep blending and working your paint around. I just think it's awesome. I get excited about paints. I love having more options. I love having more options for you, for me, and all the other artists out there. I just think it's really awesome. Bravo, ATLIER. Number 7 is environment. Dry time has a lot to do with your environment. If you want your paints to dry slower, stay away from fans, the wind, and direct sun. All those speed up your drying time. But before you go, I use the STA-WET palette all the time in plein air painting where I'm in those conditions and I don't have any problem. In fact, I only use the STA-WET palette just to keep things simple. I don't have any mediums, additives, or anything else. All I have is that STA-WET palette and I don't have any problems with blending. So I would love to share more art lessons like this one with you. If you want to check out those lessons, they are on Patreon. You become a Createful Art member to get them, and you get weekly ones with these videos now. So they're really cool. They're gonna be focused on helping you become a better artist, learn those skills you need to know, and that knowledge, that how-to knowledge, and they also help you with creativity, finding your style, and becoming a happier artist. You can check out those art lessons. There's a link right over here, or in the description. When you become a Createful Art member, you're also helping to support the videos that I'm sharing here on YouTube, so thank you so much for that. Thank you also for watching, liking, and sharing this video, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!